Well, Cardinals fans, are you ready for power hitting phenom Michael Siani? If you're not, you better get ready because he's real and he's spectacular. Coming up on Be Shafe Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of Be Shafe Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you. It is now the early morning hours of Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, on the heels of Monday night's Cardinals win at Busch Stadium. The Cardinals 6-3 victors over the Baltimore Orioles in what shall henceforth be known as the Michael Siani Game. First career big league home run by Cardinal outfielder Michael Siani on Monday. He had 4 runs driven in total, which in one single night doubles his previous career total of 2 runs batted in prior to Monday's game. So from the 9-hole, Michael Siani jump-starting the Cardinal offense, and it's a unit that Oli Marmol says right now is really rolling 1 through 9 in a way that we have not seen previously in this Cardinal season. We know it's been a slog to get here, and of course there are still some guys that are going through it from time to time, but generally you are starting to see the group at large, I think, turn the corner. Long way to go because this Cardinals team is still 5 games below 500, but you are seeing the signs of life that you would have hoped to recognize by this point in time, and maybe it is something the Cardinals can sustain. Came into this homestand wondering whether they would be up to the task of playing against some competitive ball clubs coming in. You got the Boston Red Sox, the Baltimore Orioles, and then the Chicago Cubs that we will all see at Busch Stadium. Got the series against Boston, 2 out of 3. You'd like to have swept it, but got the series, and then you start off this Orioles series on the right note, winning. Yeah, the Michael Siani game is what it is, but it's also the Sonny Gray game. You want to be able to take advantage anytime you've got your ace on the hill, and there was a point in time on Monday night where I thought we might be writing a no-hitter story up in the press box at Busch Stadium. The 6th inning, though, for Sonny Gray, things went off the rails, so we'll talk about that tonight on Be Shafe Daily. We'll talk about Michael Siani's contributions and how I think Oli Marmol actually managed the hell out of the bullpen tonight. Give him some credit for lining up the relievers the way that he did as the Cardinals take care of business 6-3 in Game 1 against Baltimore. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new to the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals Writer YouTube channel, covering the Cardinals all season long here on this channel with a daily Cardinals podcast called Be Shafe Daily and various other videos that we'll throw up from time to time as well. Put up a video on Skip Schumacher's comments as he kind of threw one of his pitchers under the bus yesterday. And I'm curious how Cardinals fans maybe feel about that one. So go check that one out on the channel. But I wanted to, before we got any further, shout out Connor, Rena, Jared, Austin, and Andrew, as well as Brett, Ken, Dominic, Jennifer, Scotty, Darren, and Justin. And Damien, of course, was the first channel member of the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals Writer YouTube channel. Those guys are all members now, and if you'd like to join them and check out some of the perks associated with a membership to the channel, you can find the link at the bottom of this video description. Appreciate all of those who are supporting my work in that way as we continue to trudge forward. But let's go ahead and get right into the content of the show tonight as the Cardinals beat the Orioles 6-3. We want to start with Siani, or do we want to start with the situation surrounding Sonny Gray? I think we'll go ahead and get to Siani first because this was a big night for a guy who, I got to do the mea culpa again. I've said it already on this podcast that I miscast Michael Siani. I misjudged the guy before I really even knew anything about him, before I really even can recall meeting the guy. That when I would look at the 40-man roster and I would look at the minor league stats for a Michael Siani prior to the very bitter end of last season when they called him up, and even through to the offseason after we had seen him a little bit last year, I just didn't really think that Michael Siani had much of a future or very much upside for the St. Louis Cardinals. And look, if there was a certain point in time where you needed a 40-man roster spot in the offseason, I would have understood if the Cardinals would have maybe let Siani pass through waivers and perhaps go in a different direction with that spot if push ever came to shove. Cardinals picked him up off of waivers in the first place from the Cincinnati Reds midway through the 2023 season. He had a little cup of coffee with the Reds and then got a brief stint with the Cardinals at the end of last season in the big leagues and went without a base hit in all of 2023 at the big league level. Played 3 games with the Reds, got 1 plate appearance, scored a run, but didn't have a hit in that time with Cincinnati. And then with the Cardinals, played in 5 games, got 5 plate appearances, 0 for 5, and did pinch run and have a stolen base, I suppose. But just not a lot of offensive muster to be found. And even with his numbers in the minors last year, 698 OPS with AAA Louisville, 675 OPS in 10 games with AAA Memphis. You know, he a light hitting outfielder who could run, who could play some solid defense. That was the book on Michael Siani. And look, that generally is still what you're going to get from him. But seeing the contributions he's made to the Cardinals this season, it's a mea culpa from me, and even more fervent than when I said previously a number of weeks ago, like, hey, there's a value to Michael Siani on this roster. Well, right now, there's a value to Michael Siani in this everyday lineup as the Cardinals starting center fielder, to the extent that, and look, I think ultimately for him to hold on to this job for the full season, you might need to see more than a 238 batting average and a 612 OPS. But I also think if Michael Siani continues on the trajectory that he's been on in recent weeks, you are going to see a tick up from those numbers. And last year, again, 698 OPS, 675 OPS across his 2 AAA stops that combined for overall a 697 OPS, because he played far more number of games with the Cincinnati AAA team there in Louisville. 697 overall was the OPS in AAA for him last year. If you could muster a 697 OPS in the big leagues and play the defense and center that Michael Siani does, well, guess what? You're basically Tommy Edman at that point, because what Siani also brings to the table is the ability to run. He had a stolen base tonight and plays that really, really quality center field defense. Probably a better throwing arm than Tommy Edman out of center field. And Tommy's OPS for last season was 705. And Michael Siani's, we talked about 697 in the minors last year. So if he could muster that, man, you'd be talking about basically 90 OPS plus, somewhere in that range for Siani. And tonight, he certainly gave a boost to his OPS plus. 3-run homer, 396 feet into the back of the bullpen in right field. Jamie Pogue throwing up his arms. He knew it was gone off the bat. I think I saw John King down there in the Cardinal bullpen throwing his arms up as well. Michael Siani, 3-run homer, and paces the Cardinal offense from the 9-hole tonight. That's fun to see. And Michael Siani, by the way, and again, this is why I feel it's a mea culpa. I try so hard not to put my foot into my mouth on this podcast, because sometimes you'll make a declaration about a player, and people want you to be bold. People want you to say the thing. They want you to say who they should DFA. They want you to be bold with your takes. But then I always remember him. I might even remember him better than the listeners do. When I say something that I do feel like I put my foot in my mouth, it sticks with me. And that's the deal with Michael Siani, because I do think, I couldn't tell you which podcast it was, but I think I made a comment at some point in time and said, he's, you don't need Michael Siani on this 40-man roster. They could find better use for the spot. I could not have been more wrong when I said that back in whatever it was, September 2023. It was probably sometime even before the Cardinals ever called him up last year. I can't remember exactly when they got him off of waivers from the Cincinnati Reds, but I was looking at a Baseball Reference page, and I didn't know the player or what the skill set would be that Siani would bring to the table, and that's where you go wrong just doing that kind of thing. So that's 100% on me, and here's what I'm here to tell you about the skill set of Michael Siani. We know he can lay a bunt down, and he's the best bunter in the Cardinals organization, more likely than not. That's not the end-all, be-all. That's not maybe at the top of a resume for most ball players, but it is a skill set that he possesses. And I like seeing the Cardinals have a guy like that on the team, just generally speaking. And if it gets to a point where maybe Tommy Edman comes back or whatever the outfield shuffling should see, that Siani ends up being a guy off the bench again, defensive replacement in late innings, especially imagine a world in which the Cardinals are, in the playoffs, to have a guy who could come in and basically guaranteed get a bunt down. Now, I say guaranteed. He had an opportunity tonight where he was not able to do it, but largely he is very successful in that area. He's also just really good defensively in center field. He stabilizes things for a pitching staff. That's something that those pitchers are always going to appreciate. And essentially, he was providing and has been providing for the Cardinals what we thought or hoped that Victor Scott II could provide at the beginning of this year, where we said, look, anything you do offensively is a bonus. Lock things down defensively, run the bases really well when you do get on base, and that'll be enough. But I guess what we ultimately saw in Victor Scott's play is like there is a limit to how little a guy can perform offensively where you can still carry him on the roster. And ultimately, Victor Scott needed to get to Memphis for some more seasoning. But Michael Siani is basically coming through with that description of a guy who's teetering toward, I don't think the OPS plus is quite 90 just yet, because again, he was a sub 600 OPS before tonight, but now he's up to a 612 OPS, and that's not earth-shattering by any means. There is no stretching of that imagination where you go, oh, that's a great OPS, albeit it is higher than Paul Goldschmidt's OPS for the time being, but that's neither here nor there in this conversation. But Michael Siani has sort of been the light-hitting center fielder who does everything right, plays great sterling defense, steals you bases when he's out there, can lay a bunt down. And then tonight we see a new element of his game, the power approach. And over the last 15 games for Michael Siani, he started to turn things around offensively in a greater way than just what you look at when you say, hey, he hit a home run tonight, his first big league bomb. That's great. Last 15 games, this is a span of 41 at-bats, 341 batting average, 357 on base, and a 439 slug. That's an OPS of almost 800 in that span. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to be that guy consistently, but that's notable for Michael Siani. He's been grinding up at the plate, and over the last half month or so, I guess whatever the 15 games have been, I don't know game log-wise how far back that travels for Siani, but we've seen him turn the corner a little bit at the plate. And he doesn't need to be an 800 OPS or even a 750 OPS. If he could be a 650 OPS for a full season, and that's an 85 OPS plus or whatever, yeah, maybe he's 10 to 15% below league average. But if he's your number 9 hitter doing that, I genuinely think as long as the rest of your lineup is doing what it's supposed to, that you can take that and smile about it when it comes to Michael Siani's role with the Cardinals. And even if that is a little bit light for your taste as far as offense, and if he goes back into a lull where he settles in as a sub 600 OPS type of guy, then sure, he doesn't need to be in the everyday lineup if you ultimately can find options that are more suitable who can have some higher upside offensively. But this guy is getting the opportunity right now to play, and he's running with it. And I think you leave him in there every day at this point. I know what we said last year. It was hashtag everyday Dylan. Look, man, Dylan Carlson, since he's come back from the injured list, and it's a shame because I don't think it would have been this way if he hadn't had the outfield collision with Jordan Walker out there in Mesa, Arizona, right before the season began. And it wasn't even a spring training game. It was just an exhibition after the real spring training Grapefruit League slate. And he gets a shoulder injury as a result of that collision. And I don't think he would have struggled to this extent if he had just picked up that, taken that momentum that he had coming out of Jupiter and just taking it into the season. I think it could be a completely different story right now for Dylan Carlson. But to my eyes, to the eye test, he has not looked good. It's been really, really rough for him. Obviously, at the plate, the numbers speak for themselves. But defensively, he's looked kind of lost to my eye. I made the comment tonight that it's been a little bit of a Lane Thomas syndrome with what we saw from him in 2021. And if you can remember back to that, when Lane Thomas had the post-COVID haze, that was a brutal period of time. And he's since gone on to have some nice seasons with the Washington Nationals, of course. But for me right now, I like Dylan Carlson coming around a little bit at the plate, has come up with a couple of pinch hits and gotten into some games. But with what defensively is really the barometer for me, and in center, almost immediately after coming off the injured list, he had that play over his head in center field where it just looked like a ball that he gave up on. I can't remember offhand which game that was, but it's been a week or more at this point in time since that. But there's also just been some plays in right field, balls he hasn't gotten to, that it's just, I'm not sure what it is. The aesthetic of it tells me, though, he's just not in a great spot right now. Michael Siani is. He's locked in, and as much as I would love to see Dylan Carlson get a chance and run with it, I think for now, you continue to bring Dylan off the bench. You can certainly utilize him in late inning situations in right field because you're not probably bringing him in defensively to replace Siani in center. Siani's the premier defensive center fielder on this team, especially until Tommy Edman gets back from his injury, which who knows when that could be, right? Remember my commentary. It's still the same. Anything you get from Tommy Edman in the first half of the season is a bonus. It's what I said back in spring training. It's what I still believe. Now, granted, he is eligible to come off the injured list within the next week or so because they bumped that to a 60-day IL, and that evaporates within the May 20-something. I just don't know that he's physically that close to being ready. Maybe you see him in June. Hopefully there's news of a potential rehab assignment for Tommy before too long. When that happens, though, I think it's going to be a somewhat lengthy one that they'll utilize the allotment that they get. I don't know if it's 20 days. It may not be that long, but a week or two, I think you could certainly see as he needs to get back up to game speed. So for right now, it's all systems go, full speed ahead, in my opinion, for Michael Siani with the way that he's playing, with not only the stuff that's a given with him, the defense, the base running, the bunting ability, but the offensive jolt that he's given the Cardinals right now too. It was interesting to see Nolan Gorman. He reached base via walk, I believe it was, in that second inning. And he was the first Cardinal to do it tonight, but we ultimately saw it 4 times. The base running. Nolan Gorman steals second off of, well, Dean Kramer was the pitcher, Adley Rutschman the catcher. I don't know who you blame, but all night long this was the case for the Orioles, that the Cardinals clearly came into the series and had a meeting with the coaching staff and the players about, hey, here's how we're going to approach this series, or at least this game. We'll see if it's different on Tuesday or Wednesday, but from a base running perspective, the Cardinals had a read on something where you had guys like Alec Burleson and Paul Goldschmidt stealing bases, and Nolan Gorman was the first to do it. And that guy just does not strike me historically as a base stealer. I guess I'll look up the numbers to see how often he's stolen a base in his career. I'm going to bet the number is in the single digits, though. I'm going to say that before I read it, and I would be 100% correct. 8 steals in the career for Nolan Gorman in the big leagues, had 7 of them last year, went 7 for 9, was 1 for 1 in 2022 as a rookie. It's just not a part of his game that you see very often. And prior to tonight, he was 0 for 1 in stealing attempts in 2024. Well, now he's 1 for 2. And he got it going early for the Cardinals. Uncontested. There's no throw. There was no semblance of a throw. And I don't know if it's a case of, I'd have to go back and look at each and every instance of it tonight. If it's a case of the Cardinals had a read that it's just a general tendency of maybe Dean Kramer, or maybe it's the Baltimore pitching staff in general, when you've got 2 outs in an inning in particular, that you just sort of give up on the notion of managing the running game and just say, screw it, we're going to strike the guy out so it just doesn't matter. I don't know if that's the way that they approach it. And it can't be the case in the 7th inning when the Cardinals pull off the double steal with Goldschmidt and Burleson. That is about the most unlikely double steal you could think of. Although Goldie used to steal lots of bases, especially when he was with Arizona before coming to the Cardinals. He had at least one 30 stolen base season. I think he might have had a couple of them. I'm going to go back and check out his stats now. Yeah, only one, but he did it in 2016, 32 for 37 in stolen base attempts. With the Cardinals, his individual season high was 12. He went 12 for 12 back in 2021. He was 11 for 13 last year. Tonight, Goldie stole for the 3rd time of the year. He's 3 for 3, always successful. He's been very successful. He's only been thrown out 3 times stealing since joining the Cardinals, and he's racked up, doing some quick math, something like 36, 37 successful stolen bases with St. Louis. But nevertheless, they got that going in the 7th inning with 1 out, so not with 2 outs. So there goes my theory on that. Regardless, Cardinals 4 for 4 tonight, and the first one was Gorman, which set up Siani's RBI hit, just a seeing eye single through the middle of the infield. Cardinals take the lead there. And then for his part, Siani very quickly stole second base. Cardinals didn't get any additional run scoring from that situation, but was obviously an interesting facet of the game to see that the Cardinals were willing to run early and run often against this Baltimore pitching staff. We'll see if Baltimore makes the adjustment tomorrow or Wednesday, because it had to be a concerted effort coming into Monday's game. The Cardinals, they should be running, it feels like, but then you think about the personnel, and it's like, all right, Mason Wynn, he can run, obviously. Michael Siani can do it, of course, but Tommy Edman is not on the active roster right now. Victor Scott II is no longer here, so maybe not as many bona fide candidates for base stealing as you would otherwise have thought maybe coming into the year for the Cardinals, but they found a way anyway tonight, going 4 for 4 on stolen base attempts. 1 directly turns into a run with Gorman swiping second, leading to the Siani hit that scores him from second base. And then in the 7th inning, the double steal ends up resulting in a run as well when Mason Wynn chops an infield hit to the right side, just put it in the Bermuda Triangle in no man's land there, and was able to get to first base, and the runner scores easily from third. And that's an insurance run that you feel better about, 6-3 instead of 5-3. I don't think it would have made any difference anyway with Ryan Helsley. Ryan Helsley got back on the mound tonight. It's been a number of days. It's been like 6 days since we had seen Ryan Helsley, because the Cardinals, when they've been winning some games, they haven't needed him. Boston series, they won 2 times without needing their closing pitcher. And then obviously when you're losing a game, you're not going to bring Ryan Helsley in the ninth, which was the case on Sunday. But 9 pitches, 5 strikes, 3 outs, and that included a walk as well. So pretty impressive stuff from Helsley as usual. His ERA down to 1.29 for the season. But I mentioned Bermuda Triangle, and that's going to bring me to a discussion as we shift from talking about Michael Siani and the Cardinal offense, which I guess I didn't talk much about the offense beyond Siani, but there wasn't really much to say. But they were 4 for 13 with runners in scoring position today. Did leave 9 on base, but that's a much more suitable amount when it comes to RISP. And the homer by Siani was obviously part of that because it was a 3-run shot. But solid enough night by the offense. Over for Goldie and Arenado, although Goldie did reach via walk, and he scored that run on the Mason Wynn dribbler. Newpar was over, but he walked twice. He continues to get on base at the top. Donovan 1 for 5. Wynn and Siani really got things going at the bottom of the order. 2 for 4 as well for Mason Wynn. A couple of RBIs for him in this game. He had an RBI in the same inning as Siani's home run in the 4th, and then another one in the 7th inning as he pushes that batting average up to 288 with a 2 for 4 night and the OPS up to 739. Maybe a little surprising he didn't find a moment to swipe a bag tonight. But offensively, looking really good. And normally we talk about Mason Wynn playing sterling defense at shortstop. Tonight was not a case of that for Mason Wynn. And I alluded to it with the Bermuda Triangle comment. There was a play in the 6th inning with Sonny Gray on the mound, and he had a no-hitter going at the time. No hits through 5. Sonny was being Sonny. And then ball into the Bermuda Triangle and shallow left center field. Mason Wynn was running out on this ball with the left fielder and center fielder converging as well. I just think somebody else should have taken charge. But it started off with Mason Wynn having a beat on it, and then it just kept carrying on him. And maybe you like to see the left fielder. I think they would have had the best chance at it if there would have been a recognition early on of what I saw up in the press box, which was that Mason Wynn was not going to get to this ball. It just felt like one that was going to drop in. He did get leather on it. I think it kind of grazed the glove, which is why they ruled an error. And the other reason they ruled an error is because Sonny had a no-hitter going, and that's not going to be the one to tank it with a hometown official scorer. Now, eventually, I thought they might take the error away once the Orioles did get their first hit. But as I sit here recording this after 1 a.m. Central Time on Tuesday, still 2 errors listed for Mason Wynn. So it is what it is. And then the second error was made on the very next play. It was a routine, well-struck 6-4-3 double play ball. And I say well-struck because it wasn't softly hit. It wasn't like it ate him up because it was so hard hit. I guess I could look at the StatCast of it, but it was as tailor-made of a 6-4-3 double play as you're ever going to find, hit directly to Mason Wynn. And I think he was just kind of thinking about it a little too hard, still reeling a little maybe from the recognition that, like, I don't know if Mason Wynn knew that they ruled an error on the first one, if maybe he thought that he had just cost Sonny Gray the no-hitter, and that's why he was playing a little bit uneasy, perhaps, as the ball finds him once again right there. But it was an error. That one was a bona fide error. Boots it, would have been a 6-4-3 double play 99 times out of 100. And in that particular instance, it wasn't. I guess, though, I do need to give Mason Wynn a little bit of a reprieve. StatCast, if it's the play I'm thinking of, Jorge Mateo's grounder, I guess they ruled it a fielder's choice, which doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what that, because he did get an error on the play. Let me know in the comments if you're making sense of this. But 106.6 off the bat, according to what I'm seeing here on StatCast. And because it was the very next batter after Cedric Mullins. And the reason I remember without even needing to look it up that Mullins was the guy that hit the seeing eye blooper into shallow left center field was because earlier in the AB, Mullins tried to bunt his way on to break up a no-hitter, which Cardinals fans at Busch Stadium had some things to say about. They gave him a hearty round of boos in the middle of that AB. But ultimately, the error on Wynn going back on the ball in shallow left center, error on the grounder by Jorge Mateo, and then that leads to Gunnar Henderson, the first sweeper, and I think this is right. John Denton was asking about it, asking Sonny and asked Oli about it post-game. In a funny moment, when he asked Sonny about it, he said that's the first extra base hit you've given up on a sweeper since 2022. And last year, your sweeper was, and this was JD's stat, so I don't know where he got it from, but he's got the MLB access to the MLB StatCast stuff. He said, I think it was the best pitch in baseball. Like, of any pitcher, Sonny Gray's sweeper last year graded out the highest in whatever the metrics were that you'd be looking at. And it was funny. It was in the middle of the question, and Sonny interrupts or interjects and goes, yes, it was. It was indeed the singular best pitch in baseball last year, Sonny Gray sweeper. So he gives one up to Gunnar Henderson on a sweeper, and nothing to be too ashamed about there because Gunnar's done it to a lot of people this year. 16 home runs now on the year for Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles. Has been doing a great job, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's fantasy points for me. Anyway, sweeper that he just left over the plate too much. And Sonny said and it's hard to ask Sonny Gray a question about something like that because he's going to be so locked into the moment instead of praising himself for having a great sweeper, although he did say, yes, it was the best. It was the best in baseball last year. Instead of praising his sweeper, though, which is, I think, what the reporter is hoping to get, so you get a quote of him talking about how good that pitch has been for him, he instead talks about what happened and why it ends up getting hit for a homer tonight, which is just obviously just another example of the competitor that Sonny Gray is, which we'll talk more about. He actually took himself out of this game tonight, although I think Oli would have pulled him anyway in the spot that he did. Sonny Gray was the one motioning for Oli to come out and get him. But just the competitor that Sonny Gray is talking about, his sweeper is always such a good pitch, and tonight he felt like he wanted to throw more sweepers. And as a result, you throw a pitch more times, you make one mistake with it at one point, and against the wrong hitter. And Gunnar Henderson right now, with the way he's going, is certainly the wrong hitter to make a mistake to. And so that kind of explains the way that goes. But that's what broke up the no-hitter. A couple of Mason Wynn errors, and then we were waiting to wonder, would there ever be an official scoring change on that error by Wynn? There wasn't, and of course there didn't need to be for history to evaporate before our eyes. Gunnar Henderson, 3-run shot. Suddenly you had not only the no-hitter was sapped, but it's a 5-3 game when the Cardinals are really needing to try and get this series off on the right foot against the Baltimore Orioles. And ultimately they were able to do that in part because of how great Sonny Gray was for the first 5 innings, but also because as that inning began to unfold on him, he had 57 pitches through 5. Suddenly he was up to 88 pitches as this 6th inning was unfolding, 31 total pitches. And the final pitch that he threw of the night was one that induced a fly ball to left field for the second out of that 6th inning. And that was the point at which he motioned to Oli Marmol and said, come on out and get me. That's going to do it for me. I believe that was Santander that hit the fly ball. And it was a deep count, grinding it out. Sonny said he felt great. But you think about the elements that would cause a guy, and again, we know how well Sonny Gray knows his body and knows his game. It just wasn't even really a question for him at that point as he got deeper into a very stressful inning where he threw 31 pitches. He said about maybe the first 25 pitches even of that inning, he still felt really good. But at a certain point, the stressful pitches in the same inning, in the St. Louis humidity, 90 degrees, it all starts to kind of stack up on you. And that was the point at which he just made the decision and said, I know my body. I've got nothing left right here. I'm going to call it. And I do think Oli said, look, they had JoJo Romero ready for the lefty Cowser, although they anticipated that Ryan Mountcastle was likely to come in as a pinch hitter if they brought in Romero, which is what happened. But they just trust JoJo even in a less ideal matchup because Mountcastle kills lefties historically. But they said we played all that out and knew that was a possibility. I do wonder if Gray had not asked out, if you might have seen them try to rush Kittredge to get ready. But, of course, you can't really do that because there is the 3-batter minimum. So it's just you want to go with the matchups, but at that point in a game, especially with a team like Baltimore, as Oli Marmol, that they're going to be able to match whatever you do. Whatever pitcher you bring in, or if you leave your starter out there, the opposing manager is going to have the chance to match and to set up the ideal matchup for his club. So that's just another facet of JoJo Romero that you really got to like if you're the Cardinals is, yes, it's not an ideal matchup. The batter is good against lefties historically and is going to have an advantage over you in that spot. And for the Cardinals, they just say, we're going to take our chances and we'll take our shot with a fresh pitcher with a lefty on righty, even though it's not the perfect matchup. We know that's coming, and we're going to do it anyway. And Jojo Romero, true to form, continues to look really good for the Cardinals. Inning in a third, 1 strikeout, no hits, no walks. So he gets out of that 6th, and then he goes and pitches a clean 7th. And then where I said that Oli Marmol just managed a stupendous bullpen tonight in the way that he handled the pitching staff, John King comes out in the 8th inning. And you might be thinking, that's not really normal in a 2-run game that you go with John King. When did he move up the totem pole to that degree? But again, the big spot in the game was Sonny Gray's 6th when things started to go off the rails. You had to staunch the bleeding there. So you don't go to John King in that spot. You go to your best fireman who is going to be conducive to the matchup. And maybe Kittredge would be that option. He's been a little leakier as of late. So it's just going to depend on the matchup in that spot. But they were getting JoJo ready, obviously, because they had Kittredge ready to come in later on in the game was going to be the thought. But JoJo was the guy there in the 6th. He gets him out of it, and then you're able to, and probably too with the way that the lineup's set up, I'd have to go back and look at that 7th inning of what they could expect the opposition to be for JoJo if he stayed in through the end of that 6th and then came out again in the 7th inning. Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Jorge Mateo was who JoJo ended up facing there in the 7th. And so you figure maybe Mullins is the most marquee of that grouping. So you might want to have that lefty-lefty matchup. And yes, there are 2 righties that JoJo faces on either side of that Cedric Mullins sandwich, but maybe that's part of the reason that they go with the lefty there in that spot. But doing so, you know, too, that later in the game, there's going to be a moment where you're going to need another lefty because it is a lineup for Baltimore that carries a good number of them. And that ends up being the spot for John King. And that's a tough one. You get Gunnar Henderson coming out in the top of the 8th inning, and then you get Adley Rutschman, and Ryan O'Hearn ends up as the 3rd batter in that frame. So it's a sea of lefties consecutively. Obviously, Adley Rutschman is a switch hitter, so they turn him around. They walk him, but he gets the lefty O'Hearn. So John King coming in the 8th of a 2-run game, which is very much a setup type of scenario, late game situation. Cardinals really need to get this thing taken care of and win this game. And John King, I know he walked Rutschman, but you might as well be careful with the most dangerous hitter of that trio. He gets 2 outs, and then you go right to Andrew Kittredge. Only needs 1 out of him, and he delivered it on 2 pitches, 2 strikes. And then you're out of the 8th inning. Boom, you go to Ryan Helsley. Well, that's automatic. You know the game's basically over at that point, especially after the Cardinals were able to add that run at the bottom of the 7th inning. So you had that even a little bit more cushion than you necessarily needed with Ryan Helsley coming on for a 3-out save with a 3-run lead. Just really good handling of the bullpen tonight where it's like, yeah, look, John King got the 2 lefties out that he needed to get. Oli Marmol was ready for that scenario if he ended up walking a guy, or it may have been partially intentional. Now, I don't think you're going to ever put on a base runner in that spot just to try to flirt with danger. But could they have said, hey, we're going to be a little bit more careful with Adley Rutschman here because we also know that we've got the 3-run lead, that you put him on and allow a home run, you still have the lead. So if there's going to be one guy that you say, don't beat me, and I'm John King, it's that guy who's going to be turning around. He's the only right-handed batter you'll face because he is a switch hitter. And they say, that's fine. We'll take the walk there. Kittredge can come out and get his man, and then we turn things over to Helsley for the 9th. I thought Oli Marmol did an exceptional job of managing the bullpen tonight, and obviously it started with pulling Sonny Gray when he did. And up in the press box, I was having conversations saying, I like the aggression there from Oli to pull Sonny Gray. And, of course, then we were seeing what everybody on TV, I think, saw right away, was that Sonny was motioning to say, come on and get me, which was something that I, initially did not see and did not know was the case, but it ultimately was, as Sonny Gray knows his game and knows his body and knew that was the time for him to be finished, as Cardinals manager Oli Marmol explained postgame.
You saw Sonny look at you in the dugout and motion for you to come out.
He's done.
Was he cramping up? Or?
He was done.
He was done?
Yeah. We knew we'd go lefty there to be Mount Castle. He's pretty good against lefties, so you weigh that. But, yeah, it was Sonny did his job. He was cruising, man. I think 57 pitches through the first 5 innings, and then ran into a little bit of some non-plays and try to pitch out of it, but he did more than his job. I mean, those first 5 innings were absolutely elite.
Did it have to do with the length of that inning?
Yeah, I think he was at 31 pitches that inning. He did his job.
Was that decision that we knew was going to happen, that would be the last guy, or was that fully based on?
Yeah, we had JoJo ready for that spot there, depending on how that at-bat went, but it was time. Yeah.
Is that another example of a guy who obviously knows himself and knows where he's at pretty well?
Yes. He's as straightforward as they get, and I love it.
That was Oli Marmol, Cardinals manager, talking about Sonny Gray. You heard that last question I asked him. Is that just a guy that knows himself? And just the grin on Oli's face. I can only imagine what was actually said on that mound. Might have to try to find one of the infielders and be like, what was said there? And maybe they all keep it in-house. But just like the very Sonny Gray way of delivering a message like that, I wonder what it was. Enough to Oli cracking a smile post-game. Like at the beginning of that quote, where John Denton asked the question and he said, he's done. And John's like, was it a cramp or was it? No, he's just done. He's done. Like Oli was smiling the whole time delivering that. If you haven't seen the video version of it, I think Bally Sports tweeted it out, but that was classic to see that reaction from Oli Marmol of, you just know whatever Sonny said in the way that he delivered the message of, you can go ahead and take me out now, had to have been some grade A stuff is my best guess based on Oli's reaction post game there. And in fact, the more I think about it, we'll play it again. In fact, what he probably said is, I'm done. And I imagine he just kept repeating, I'm done, until Oli, took him out. If I had to guess, it may have just been those 2 words on a loop. Sonny Gray saying, I'm done. Let's listen to Oli again. And it almost feels like I can hear it in Sonny's voice after diving in on how Oli explains it here.
Look at you in the dugout and motion for you to come out.
He's done.
Was he cramping up or?
He was done.
He was done?
Yeah.
I mean, he's done. Yeah, he was done. Sonny said he was done. We'll listen to a little bit of Sonny Gray's explanation, too, for how he came to know that was the case. He said he felt good. He even felt good through that, the first 25 pitches maybe of that 6th inning. But at a certain point in that Santander at bat, I think he felt that he was not hitting his spots. There was one pitch that was pretty far off the plate, and then ultimately got out of it with not out of it, but got the fly ball out, and at that point was like, all right, I've given what I can give, and that's gonna do it. But here's a little Sonny Gray from the post-game clubhouse after the Cardinals beat the Baltimore Orioles 6-3.
It was long. Yeah. It was long.
Was it that's what I wonder, was it the length of it or kind of just
the length? I think the combination of all three. I felt great going out for the 6th, and I felt great during the 6th, and then I felt really good to the righty, and then when he hit the dribbler to third, I was kind of like, I kind of hit a little bit of a wall after that one.
And that one Sonny's talking about there was almost just a spectacular play by Nolan Arenado on just a dribbler to the left side. Arenado charges it bare hand like he always does, and just was not quite able to get the out on Jordan Westberg at first base. Just made a really good play on it and couldn't get him. And that's when Anthony Santander came up to the bat, and I'll double check this, but it ended up being a full count pitch that got the final out. So he throws 6 pitches there, and that was the at-bat, whereas Sonny explains he started to really kind of feel the effects.
And then when Santander was up, I just felt like I was kind of like searching, just kind of feeling my way through that at-bat, and tried to make a pitch to 3-2, just make a quality pitch. And when he flew out after that, I was like, it's probably, I mean, it's just, I gotta be done.
Doesn't get much more straightforward than that, does it? Cardinals pitcher Sonny Gray, who, by the way, was wearing the coolest hat that I've ever seen tonight in the postgame clubhouse. It's like a teal mint green almost Cardinal hat. It's got the old school Cardinal logo, the circular logo. It's like a ball behind the singular bird on the bat. It says St. Louis across the top, Cardinals across the bottom of the circle. Growing up, my dad had like a floor rug, a circular floor rug that was hanging on the wall. I wonder if my dad still got that. Just a really cool logo. And it's like a teal hat with a yellow It's like a trucker hat or a golfing hat with like a yellow string across the front. New Era. Nice New Era flag on the side. Super slick. I can't even wear Cardinals hats anymore. I've talked about how I'm not a Cardinals fan. Cover the Cardinals now. I used to be a Cardinals fan. But now I don't wear Cardinals gear and stuff like that because I'm a neutral observer, objective, covering the team. But I might even have to get me one of these hats because someday, maybe long, long into the future, it wouldn't be frowned upon for me to wear, just in casually wear a hat like this. It is a damn cool hat. So anyway, I tweeted that out because I said I can't take a picture of it in the clubhouse. Maybe could have asked Sonny to do it, but his son was there, and I didn't want to take up any time after his sessions are long because he gives long and thoughtful answers to questions. And so I was like, I'm not going to bother. But I tweeted out and said, you guys are going to see this hat, and it's the coolest hat. And it certainly was. By the way, I mean, it's on you guys have seen it by now. It's on I'm so stupid. I already knew I was putting Sonny Gray's face in the thumbnail for the video, so y'all have very clearly seen the hat. Anyway, I'll move on since I realized I just wasted time talking about something you've already seen. But we're getting up over the 40-minute mark anyway, so I'll leave you with this. Well, not leave you with it, but I'm going to give you a little more Sonny Gray audio because I thought this was a good question by the Cat. Jim Hayes asked him where he was able to kind of articulate some of the elements that were going through his mind and his body as he realized that 31-pitch sixth inning was wearing on him.
You felt good, obviously, through the first five, right?
I felt good through the sixth. I mean, it's 31. I mean, there's just a lot of pitches deep into the game. We have no stress pitches the whole game, and then you're throwing 25 stress pitches in a row in the sixth when it's 90 degrees outside with 100% humidity. Like, I felt great the whole time. It's just, I mean, that's just a long inning deep in the game. I mean, I almost doubled my pitch count in one inning. I mean, that's just, I felt great going out for the sixth. I felt great probably 20 to 25 pitches through the sixth. And then, like I said, the last five or so I throw, I just felt like I was kind of like, I mean, that's just a lot of pitches. It's just a lot.
Perhaps I gave the Cat too much credit. You felt good through the fifth, he said. That was his question. But it inspired an excellent answer. That's why the Cat's the best. Knows what he's doing out there in the post-game scrum. But that was sort of the thought process from Sonny Gray. Said he felt great, but you just got to realize at a certain point, it's a lot of pitches, the humidity, the heat, everything kind of wearing on you. 31 pitches in any inning, even if you hadn't just breezed through the first five, it's just going to have an impact on you. And kudos to Sonny Gray for knowing himself, and it's just the Cardinals don't even have to worry with him. Like, what he says is going to be what it is. If he needs to come out of the game, he'll tell you. If he thinks he's got more, he'll tell you. I'll wait for the moment where the conclusion Oli Marmol draws is different than the one that Sonny Gray gives him. You'll probably see it pretty demonstrably on the mound if that day ever comes, but they do seem to be in lockstep, and it was obviously the right choice. You know, I was saying up in the press box that I think it's the right choice. I need to tell somebody this before JoJo has this AB against Mountcastle, because obviously, you don't want to be second guessing and using hindsight to then say, oh, I knew they should have. No, I thought it was the right move in the moment. I didn't realize that Sonny had actually asked for it, but I thought it was the move that made sense, and JoJo was able to rise to the occasion. And my goodness, what a performance by the Cardinal bullpen tonight. So Cardinals get the win. I am coming up on 2 a.m. as I record this, so that is my cue to get the hell out of here. But thank you guys, as always, for listening. Check out the channel memberships if you're interested in supporting my work on a deeper level. You get a few perks for it, and it's nothing too crazy in terms of cost. But appreciate you guys for listening. As always, we'll talk to you next time. Non-B Shafe Daily. Peace.